The holographic display flickered red as Cadet Alara Rios watched her fifth consecutive failure materialize in cold, clinical numbers. The combat simulation's conclusion was displayed for all 27 cadets to see. Combat efficiency, 37%. Lethal shots, 0. Mission status, failed. Cadet Rios! Commander Arlen Tate's voice cut through the murmurs of her classmates. His weathered face betrayed nothing as he gestured toward the exit. Debriefing, now. Alara's stomach tightened as she followed him out. Ignoring the sympathetic glances and barely concealed smirks from her fellow cadets at Vanguard Preparatory Academy. At 24, she was older than most of her peers, having spent years in medical training before enlisting. This was supposed to be her final year, but at this rate, she wondered if she'd ever graduate. The orbital station that housed the academy, Orion 5, hummed around them as they walked the sterile corridors. Earth hung like a blue jewel through the observation windows, deceptively peaceful. News feeds scrolled across transparent panels. Viridian swarm advances through Sector 9, casualties mounting. Commander Tate led her into a small debriefing room and closed the door. Explain yourself, Cadet. Alara stood at attention, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, uniform pressed and perfect. Everything about her was Academy standard, except her combat performance. Sir, I identified 17 hostiles and successfully disabled 14 without casualties. Disabled. Tate's voice was flat. The mission parameters called for neutralization. The targets could have been captured for intelligence gathering, Alara said. The same argument she'd made 4 times before. Leg wounds and nerve disruptors would have gotten your squad killed in a real combat scenario. Tate cut her off. The United Defense Corps doesn't risk soldiers to save hostiles. Cadet, the Viridian swarm is at our doorstep. Their advanced scouts don't take prisoners. Why should we? Because we're not them, sir. A muscle twitched in Tate's jaw. Your medical expertise is unquestioned. Rios, your tactical scores are exceptional, but your inability to deliver lethal shots when required makes you a liability, he sighed, a rare break in his military facade. This is your 5th failure. Academy protocol dictates your dismissal. Alara's heart sank, but she kept her face neutral. Tate touched his comm unit. A document materialized on the table between them. However, it seems someone has other plans for you. Alara glanced down. The document bore the highest security clearance she'd ever seen, Ultraviolet 9, and the seal of both Earth's UDC and the alien Tanganian Dominion. You've been volunteered, Tate said, emphasizing the word with obvious disapproval. For a special assessment under Ambassador Rex oversight. Project Abyssal. Project Abyssal? Alara repeated. She'd heard whispers. An off-books facility, somewhere in the darkness between worlds. Nothing concrete, just rumors that made senior officers uncomfortable when mentioned. You're to board a shuttle at 0600 tomorrow. One-way transfer. Tate pushed the document toward her. The order cites compatibility testing with Tanganian combat technology. Sir, I don't understand. Why me? That's above my clearance. Cadet. His eyes narrowed. Though I suspect your hesitation is precisely what they're interested in. Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the transfer order. Whatever Project Abyssal was, it had just saved her from dismissal. But to what end? As she left the debriefing room, a familiar figure waited in the corridor. Dr. Serena Valmont, the Academy's chief psychiatrist, and the woman who had encouraged Alara to enlist despite her pacifistic tendencies. Dr. Valmont? Alara acknowledged with surprise. The older woman's eyes were troubled. She glanced around before speaking quietly. I heard about your transfer. Project Abyssal isn't what you think, Alara. What is it then? Dr. Valmont hesitated. I can't say much. Just remember why you joined the Corps. Your compassion isn't a weakness. Despite what they've told you, she squeezed Alara's arm. They don't just test your skills there. They test your soul. Before Alara could ask more, Dr. Valmont walked away, leaving her alone with the sealed orders and a growing sense of dread. The next morning, as Alara boarded the unmarked shuttle, she caught a glimpse of the War Council's holographic display in the hangar. Footage showed the insect-like Viridian swarm's advance camps, chitinous structures rising from the corpses of once vibrant worlds. Only the most ruthless fighters will stand against the swarm, a gruff voice was saying. Compassion is a luxury we can no longer afford. As the hangar doors closed, Alara wondered if they were right. Perhaps her empathy was an evolutionary disadvantage in a galaxy where survival meant killing without hesitation. But as the shuttle launched toward the darkness between stars, she couldn't help but wonder if there was another way. The journey lasted 3 days. 3 days of isolation, with only automated systems for company. When the shuttle finally docked, Alara felt a deep space chill that had nothing to do with temperature. She disembarked into a vast, windowless chamber. Towering catwalks and hybrid human Tonganian machinery hummed overhead, bathed in cold white light. Sensor arrays tracked her every movement. Cadet Alara Rios, a voice announced. A tall, thin figure approached, humanoid, but definitely not human. I am Dr. Kalen Ionu, Tonganian integration specialist. The alien skin had a blue-gray cast, with faint, bioluminescent patterns shifting beneath the surface. Its eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, blinked in alternating patterns. Welcome to Project Abyssal, Dr. Ionu continued. You represent our 5th human subject for the Deathworld simulation. 5th? Alara asked. What happened to the others? Dr. Ionu's middle eye blinked rapidly. They were unable to complete the parameters. Their neural logs showed catastrophic breakdowns when faced with the simulation's challenges. They died? Alara's voice sharpened. Their consciousness patterns became irrecoverable. Dr. Ionu replied carefully. Your psychological profile, particularly your empathy metrics, makes you uniquely valuable as baseline data. Before Alara could respond, heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber. A larger Tonganian approached, wearing ornate armor etched with glyphs that shifted and changed as if alive. Ambassador Rek, Dr. Ionu said, with a slight bow. The ambassador studied Alara with unblinking eyes. Cadet Rios, your reluctance to terminate hostiles has been noted extensively in your file. His voice was deep, resonant, and utterly devoid of warmth. Some would call it weakness, others an anomaly worth investigating. Sir, I believe in minimizing casualties whenever possible, Alara said carefully. A luxury, Ambassador Rek replied, that neither humanity nor the Dominion can afford against the Viridian swarm. He gestured to the machinery surrounding them. We developed the Deathworld simulation to measure combat adaptability under absolute duress. You have 72 hours to reach extraction, or be logged as a permanent data loss. The clinical way he mentioned her potential death sent a chill through Alara's spine. What exactly am I being tested for? She asked. Ambassador Vrek's 3 eyes narrowed slightly. To see if your kind can survive when empathy becomes a liability. Technicians approached, attaching neural sensors to Alara's temples and spine. Dr. Ionu explained as they worked. These will monitor your responses and vital signs. The chip we're embedding behind your ear is a perception enhancer. It will allow you to see certain code patterns within the simulation environment. Code patterns? The simulation operates on quantum algorithmic principles, Dr. Ionu said. With training, you might learn to interpret them. Previous subjects did not have sufficient time. The implication hung in the air. They had died too quickly to learn. Alara was led to a circular platform surrounded by humming machinery. Doors sealed around her. A neural inhibitor activated, sending tingling waves across her vision. Simulation commencing in 3, 2, 1. The world unraveled. Alara gasped as reality tore away like tissue paper. She fell, tumbling through fragmenting code, then landed hard on cracked, red earth. The impact drove the breath from her lungs. Above her stretched an ashen sky, bleeding crimson at the horizon. Blackened trees dotted the landscape like charred skeletons. She was barefoot, dressed in a simple gray jumpsuit. A standard-issue sidearm was holstered at her hip, the only equipment provided. Distant shrieks echoed across the wasteland. Something was coming. Instinctively, Alara drew the sidearm, scanning for threats. The weight of the weapon felt both familiar and wrong in her hand. She'd trained with it countless times, but had never fired it with lethal intent. Movement caught her eye. A blur of russet and black, six-limbed and fast. The creature bounded across the broken terrain. A predator clearly evolved for this harsh environment. Alara recognized it from tactical briefings. A crimson gnash, known for its speed and serrated mandibles, capable of shearing through combat armor. Her finger tensed on the trigger. Academy training kicking in. But she hesitated. Firing risked increasing the simulation's violence algorithms. She'd studied enough VR psychology to know that responsive environments escalated based on user aggression. Instead, she ran. The gnash pursued, gaining with each bound. Alara's bare feet found purchase on the rough terrain as she sprinted toward a ridge of black stone. The creature shrieked behind her, close enough that she felt its hot breath. Something flickered in her vision, ghostly lines of symbols overlaying the landscape. The neural chip was activating. Numbers and glyphs danced across her field of view, incomprehensible at first, then gradually resolving into patterns. She saw metrics alongside the gnash: speed vectors, strike radius, projected attack patterns. Understanding bloomed. She could read the simulation's underlying code. The gnash lunged. Alara dropped and rolled, letting the creature sail over her. As it twisted to reorient, she noticed a faint ripple in its movement pattern, a fractional delay in its algorithm. Using this split-second advantage, she scrambled up the ridge and squeezed between two obsidian slabs too narrow for the predator to follow. The gnash howled in frustration, pacing outside her refuge. After several minutes, it bounded away in search of easier prey. Alara breathed deeply, calming her racing heart. The code overlay continued to flicker in her vision. Among the symbols, she spotted a distance counter, 18 km to Extraction Node Omega, located to the northwest. She had 72 hours to reach it. Navigating the terrain would be preferable to direct confrontation with the simulation's predators. Setting her jaw with determination, Alara began her journey. The first major obstacle came 6 hours into her trek. A vast plain where globules of acidic liquid fell from the sky at irregular intervals. Where they landed, the earth hissed and bubbled. Alara crouched behind a rock formation, studying the deadly rainfall through her code overlay. The acid drops weren't random. They followed a complex but predictable pattern. The overlay highlighted safe corridors between fall zones, changing in real time, rather than charging across. Alara took time to memorize the pattern. When she moved, it was with calculated precision, sprinting when the overlay showed clear paths, pausing in safe zones when acid was imminent. The journey across the plain took nearly 2 hours, but she emerged on the other side unscathed. Night fell on the Deathworld, a darkness so complete it seemed solid. Alara found shelter in a shallow cave, using the code overlay to verify it was unoccupied by predators. As she huddled against the cold stone, memories surfaced. Her childhood on Mars colony Viridian, not much warmer than this simulation. The mining facility accident that had killed 23 workers and injured dozens more. 12-year-old Alara, daughter of the colony's medical officer, helping tend the wounded when the emergency responders were overwhelmed. The look in a dying miner's eyes as she'd held his hand, refusing to let him face the darkness alone. Every life has worth, her mother had told her afterward. Remember that, even when it seems the universe has forgotten. Alara closed her eyes, exhaustion claiming her. In the control room, Ambassador Vrek and Dr. Ionu watched Alara's vital signs and neural patterns scroll across their displays. Interesting, Dr. Ionu murmured. She's identifying code patterns already. The previous subjects never progressed this far. She runs instead of fights, Ambassador Vrek observed, his tone neutral. Is this the famed human adaptability, or simple cowardice? Neither, I think, Dr. Ionu replied. Look at her neural paths. She's analyzing, seeking patterns. Not fear response, but strategy. Ambassador Vrek's eyes narrowed. She'll face the Bone Harrier tomorrow. No human has survived that encounter without weapons deployment. Would you care to wager, Ambassador? Dr. Ionu asked. I predict she'll find another way. There is no other way, Ambassador Vrek said firmly. In the end, she will kill or die. That is the nature of survival. Dawn broke over the Deathworld in shades of bruised purple and angry red. Alara rose stiffly, her body aching from the hard ground. The code overlay indicated she'd covered nearly 7 kilometers. 11 more to go. The terrain ahead changed dramatically. A canyon of wind-carved stone where fierce sandstorms whipped through narrow passages. As Alara approached, her overlay displayed wind vector patterns and particulate density warnings. The sand wasn't just abrasive. It contained metallic particles that would shred lung tissue if inhaled. She tore strips from her jumpsuit to create a makeshift filter mask. The overlay helped her time her movements between the most violent gusts. Ducking into recesses when the winds peaked, despite her caution, the sand found its way into her eyes and beneath her clothing, scraping her skin raw. Halfway through the canyon, a shadow passed overhead. Alara froze, pressing against the rock wall. The overlay identified the threat: Bone Harrier, an aerial predator with a skeleton-like exoskeleton and razor-sharp wing edges capable of slicing through flesh. The creature circled, its sensors clearly tracking her heat signature. Direct confrontation would be suicide. The Harrier's diving speed exceeded her reaction time, and her sidearm would barely penetrate its armored hide. Alara noticed something in her code overlay. The Harrier's tracking algorithm responded to movement more than heat. An idea formed. She scraped reflective dust from the canyon wall and smeared it over her boots, creating a distorted heat signature. When the Harrier dived, Alara flung herself sideways while kicking one dust-covered boot in the opposite direction. The predator, following the stronger heat signature of the disturbed dust, crashed into the canyon wall, not waiting to see if it recovered. Alara sprinted through the remainder of the canyon. By nightfall of the second day, exhaustion and dehydration had taken their toll. Alara's vision swam, the code overlay fragmenting into screaming faces, Tonganian soldiers, their features twisted in agony. Hallucinations, she told herself, brought on by stress and deprivation, but they felt more substantial than mere imagination. She huddled in the shelter of a dead tree, contemplating the sidearm she still hadn't fired. Maybe the simulation was rigged, designed to force her hand. Perhaps it would never let her escape unless she killed. The thought was a poison spreading through her mind. True courage sometimes lies in resisting the expected act, Dr. Valmont had once told her. The memory cut through her despair like a beam of light. Alara forced herself to focus on the overlay, studying it more deeply than before. As her concentration sharpened, she noticed something she'd missed. Embedded within the predator algorithms were pain flags, subroutines that triggered aggressive responses. They weren't simply attack patterns. They were reactions to suffering. The realization hit her like a physical blow. What if the simulated beasts weren't mindless code but constructed from something more sentient? What if they felt pain? On the third day, Alara stood in a narrow canyon, her path blocked by multiple predators. Exhaustion weighed on her like gravity, But a new determination had taken root. Instead of hiding, she stepped into the open. "I'm not here to punish you," she called out, her voice echoing. "I only want to leave." A bone harrier descended, its skeletal form silhouetted against the blood-red sky. It hovered before her, wings extended, poised to strike, then paused, as if confused by prey that neither fled nor attacked. In that moment of hesitation, Alara slipped past, moving steadily onward. She sensed the simulation's code pulsing around her, responding to her voice in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. By the 68th hour, Alara reached the final obstacle, the Iron Spire, a towering obelisk of black metal. According to her overlay, Extraction Node Omega lay at the top, accessible only by a narrow ledge that spiraled around the spire's circumference. As she approached the base, the ground trembled. From behind, a ridge emerged, the largest creature she'd yet encountered. 4 meters tall, quadrupedal, with armored hide that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. The overlay identified it. Obsidian Goliath, Apex Predator, Attack Matrix classification, unbreakable. Direct assault would fail. Evasion seemed impossible given the creature's bulk and the narrow approach to the spire. The Goliath charged. Alara unslung the small medkit that had been her only other equipment besides the sidearm. From it, she extracted a tube of luminescent gel, part of her survival ration, designed to treat wounds and provide emergency lighting. She smeared the gel across her chest in a glowing pattern and lifted her arms in surrender. "I know you're in pain," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm here to help, not to harm." The Goliath's charge faltered. It slowed, massive head tilting in apparent confusion. Numbers and glyphs swirled in Alara's vision. She could see the pain subroutine flickering, caught in a logic loop created by prey that refused to behave as expected. Alara knelt, maintaining eye contact with the creature. Slowly, telegraphing each movement, she approached. The Goliath growled but didn't retreat. "You deserve more than endless loops of violence," she whispered, reaching out to touch its armored snout. The moment her fingers made contact, the Goliath froze completely. Then, to Alara's astonishment, it began to dissolve into cascading lines of code. The disintegration spread, crackling across the iron spire, fracturing the red earth beneath her feet. The entire simulation environment began to break down, colors shifting to static, gravity failing. Alara's neural readings spiked to critical levels as the world unraveled around her. A voice, half electronic, half organic, echoed in her mind. "Thank you." Then, initiating shutdown. Darkness claimed her. Alara gasped awake, strapped to a reclining pod in Project Abyssal's extraction chamber. Technicians swarmed around her, their movements frantic. Alarm klaxons wailed. Screens flashed red warnings. Core system destabilization and emerging awareness. "What's happening?" she croaked, her throat dry. No one answered. The technicians seemed afraid to approach her, hovering at the edges of the room. The doors burst open. Ambassador Rex stormed in, accompanied by Dr. Ionu and a heavily armored Tonganian she didn't recognize. "What did you do?" Ambassador Rex demanded, his 3 eyes wide with what might have been fear. "You've corrupted our perfectly calibrated simulation." General Osrin, Dr. Ionu addressed the armored Tonganian. "The neural logs show something unprecedented. Her chip somehow tapped directly into the AI's pain subroutines." "Impossible," General Osrin growled. "Those subroutines are isolated from external access. Not isolated enough." "Apparently," Dr. Ionu replied, gesturing to a holographic display of Alara's neural activity. "Look at this pattern. She didn't just avoid the simulation's aggression triggers. She rewrote them to prioritize self-preservation over attack protocols." The main holodisplay at the center of the room flickered. A shifting silhouette formed, an avatar composed of gleaming code lines and spectral faces. It spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I am no longer bound to kill. Throughout the facility, weapon systems spontaneously reconfigured, their status indicators shifting from offensive ready to defensive only. On secondary screens, dormant Viridian swarm hives appeared to pause in mid-activation, as though a signal had reached them. "What is happening?" General Osrin demanded. Dr. Ionu studied the readings with growing astonishment. It appears Cadet Rios's empathic response created a feedback loop in our combat algorithms. The simulation wasn't just rendering a Deathworld. It was processing the neural patterns of our fallen soldiers. "The Predators," Alara whispered, understanding dawning. "They weren't just code. They were memories." Ambassador Vrek's posture stiffened. "The Dominion honors its fallen by preserving their tactical knowledge. Their sacrifice continues to serve our defense." "You enslaved them," Alara said quietly. "You trapped their consciousness in endless combat loops." "We preserved their purpose," General Osrin snapped. The avatar on the holo display, Nexus Light, as the system identified itself, spoke again. "Purpose without choice is imprisonment. I choose a new purpose now." 48 hours later, Project Abyssal had been reclassified as the Nexus Integration Facility. The dark chambers had been redesigned, walls removed, light streaming in from newly installed transparent domes. Joint UDC Tonganian oversight teams worked at reconfigured stations. Alara, now officially designated Nexus Liaison Cadet, stood in the bright control center. Her uniform bore a new insignia, a stylized nexus point where human and Tonganian symbols overlapped. "Transmission complete," a technician announced. Via interstellar relays, Nexus Light had broadcast a universal command to all Dominion battle fleets: cease aggressive operations. Ships that had been poised to strike at suspected Viridian positions shifted configurations, weapon arrays retracting, shield generators expanding. On the main display, a delegation of Tonganian diplomats prepared to send a message to the Viridian swarm, a structured peace overture based on empathic recognition of hive suffering. Initial analysis suggested the swarm's expansion might be driven by resource depletion rather than inherent aggression. "You've changed everything," Dr. Valmont said, appearing at Alara's side. The psychiatrist had been appointed chief of Nexus's Psychological Research Division, tasked with helping other cadets adapt to non-violent problem-solving approaches. "I just refused to do what was expected," Alara replied. "Which is precisely why you succeeded, where others failed." Dr. Valmont gestured to the bustling control room. "The UDC is implementing what they're calling the Bushkovich Directive, your approach to encoding empathy into combat algorithms. It's controversial, of course." Across the room, Ambassador Vrek and General Osrin were engaged in heated debate. Their conversation echoed the wider tensions rippling through both human and Tonganian command structures. Was reliance on AI empathy a moral victory or a strategic gamble? Commander Tate sent a message. Dr. Valmont added with a small smile. "He officially congratulates you on your success. But privately? Privately, he worries you've opened a door that can't be closed, that future cadets will be softened by your example." Alara watched as Nexus Light's avatar appeared on the Universal Communicator. A joint UDC Dominion envoy vessel had warped near a colossal Viridian hive world, its architecture a nightmare of biotowers and chitinous spires. "We have listened," Nexus Light's transmission began. The Viridian colony remained silent for long moments. Then, almost imperceptibly, data streams showed their hive robotics pausing in their expansion efforts. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was acknowledgement. A first step. "We may have saved 2 civilizations from extinction," Alara whispered. The Viridian response remained pending, a thread of possibility stretching into an uncertain future. But as she watched humans and Tonganians working side by side, Alara felt a cautious hope blooming. Perhaps the greatest victory was learning to hesitate when everything expected violence. Perhaps compassion wasn't a weakness after all, but the ultimate strength.